The South African savanna stretched endlessly beneath a blazing sun, a golden sea of scorched grass rippling in the hot wind. On the fringes of Kruger National Park, an aging male lion trudged across the cracked, parched earth, a mere shadow of the regal beast he once was. His mane, once a thick, radiant crown of golden brown, had dwindled to a patchy tangle, matted with dust and crusted sweat. Eyes that once blazed with fierce pride were now sunken, clouded by time and the scars of countless battles. His sharp teeth, once lethal tools that ripped through the hides of massive prey, had mostly vanished, leaving only a few worn stubs, useless against the hunger gnawing at his frail frame. His ribs protruded sharply beneath a rough, weathered hide, where angry sores festered in patches of thinning fur, worn away by the relentless heat. Each step was a labored effort, his trembling legs barely supporting his gaunt body, blunt claws scraping faintly against the dry ground. This lion had once reigned over a mighty pride, guiding them through bountiful hunts, his thunderous roar reverberating across the plains, instilling fear in all who heard it. But time, the cruelest predator, spares no one. Younger, stronger lions, brimming with vigor and ambition, had overthrown him in a brutal, moonlit clash he could no longer withstand. The scars crisscrossing his back and shoulders bore witness to that fateful night, the night he lost everything. Exiled from his pride, he roamed alone through the lands he once ruled, now a forgotten outcast, forsaken by those who had once revered his might. Days blurred into weeks as he subsisted on murky puddles from rare rains and scraps scavenged from carcasses stripped bare by vultures. Occasionally, he'd raise his head and unleash a feeble roar, a raspy, hollow sound that faded into the empty air unanswered. Starving and weary, he sought refuge in the sparse shade of stunted trees. But Kruger's blistering heat offered no reprieve. The old wounds that once marked his victories now stood as grim reminders of nature's merciless hand against the weak. One sweltering afternoon, with the sun blazing like a molten orb overhead, a group of tourists spotted his skeletal form from a distance. Among them was Sarah, an amateur photographer, who lifted her camera with trembling hands and captured the scene. The image on her screen told a haunting story, a forsaken king dragging himself across a barren wasteland, his dulled eyes gazing into the distance as if searching for something long lost. She shared the photos online with a heartfelt caption, and they spread rapidly across wildlife conservation forums, eventually reaching the rangers of Kruger National Park. The tale of the frail old lion struck a chord with two seasoned rangers, James Carter and Ethan Brooks. James, a tall, rugged man with jet-black hair and piercing eyes, was a veteran of the wild. For over 15 years, he'd navigated these untamed lands, confronting ferocious lions, enraged rhinos, and ruthless poachers. Beneath his tough exterior pulsed a compassionate heart, especially for creatures left to fate's mercy. He'd once nursed an injured leopard cub back to health until it could survive on its own. To James, every life deserved a chance. Ethan Brooks, his steadfast partner, was a few years younger, with a calm demeanor, warm brown eyes, and a quiet smile. Meticulous and observant, Ethan could read the bush like an open book. From the depth of a paw print in the sand, he could discern a starving lion from a thriving one. Though soft-spoken, his steady presence perfectly balanced James's fiery determination. In the cramped, wood-scented ranger station, James sat across from Ethan, Sarah's photos scattered across the table. He rapped his knuckles against the worn wood, his deep voice steady yet resolute. "We can't let him waste away out there. He's fought his whole life, he deserves some peace now." Ethan nodded, adjusting his glasses, his tone soft but firm. "I'm with you, but we need to be cautious. Even weakened, a lion's still dangerous. Let's plan this right." Together, they devised a strategy: track the lion, evaluate its condition, and, if feasible, bring it to a sanctuary for its final days. They loaded an old but trusty truck with medical supplies, a tranquilizer gun, clean water, and a sack of fresh beef, a last-ditch lure for a starving beast. At dawn, as streaks of orange painted the horizon, James and Ethan set out, the truck rumbling along Kruger's winding trails. The savanna unfurled before them, a vast expanse of brittle grass and thorny shrubs quivering in the hot breeze. James gripped the wheel, eyes scouring the terrain, while Ethan sat beside him, binoculars in hand, scribbling notes on a small pad. The heat was unrelenting, sweat soaking their faded khaki shirts. After an hour, Ethan raised a hand. "Hold up, James. Look." He pointed to a faint paw print in the sand, large but shallow. "Lion tracks, weak ones. It's him." James nodded, easing off the gas, his voice low. "We're close. Stay alert." They followed the trail, threading through spiky bushes and past weathered boulders. The sun climbed higher, its glare reflecting off the ground, turning every shadow into a puzzle. Ethan wiped his brow, murmuring, he can't have gone far in this state. He's likely nearby. Sure enough, after nearly 3 hours, they found him. The lion lay beneath a gnarled acacia tree. Head drooping, his labored breaths rasping through cracked lips. His half-closed eyes seemed lifeless, but as James and Ethan stepped from the truck, he lifted his head slightly. A flicker of weariness glinting in his clouded gaze. James signaled Ethan to hang back, then raised the tranquilizer gun. "If he charges, I'm taking the shot," he whispered. Finger poised on the trigger. But Ethan, ever perceptive, rested a hand on James's shoulder. His voice calm yet firm. "Wait. Look at him, James. He's got nothing left to fight with. Let's try another way." James studied the lion a moment longer, then lowered the gun with a nod. Opting for patience, they approached gently. Ethan made soft, soothing sounds like a murmured lullaby, while James offered a slab of raw beef, its scent cutting through the dry air. The lion's nostrils flared, ears twitching faintly. He raised his weary eyes, hunger stirring beneath exhaustion. James edged closer, holding the meat just out of reach, coaxing the lion to move. With a final surge of strength, it stretched its neck, jaws parting to seize the meat, its blunt teeth gnashing desperately. Blood dripped from the chunk, streaking the dust on its chin in dark red lines. Ethan cracked a faint smile. "He still wants to live, James. We got here just in time." As the lion ate, James administered a syringe of health-boosting medication into its thick shoulder. The drug took effect quickly, its eyes brightening slightly, though its body still trembled. They offered more meat and a trickle of water, droplets sliding down its parched throat. For the first time in days, a faint spark of hope pierced the lion's despair. But the calm was short-lived. As James turned to fetch more water, a low growl rumbled from nearby bushes. A younger, stronger male lion emerged, its eyes burning with menace. Drawn by the meat or defending its territory, it charged with terrifying speed. The old lion growled weakly, no match for the intruder. Ethan spun around, shouting, "James, watch out." James snapped the tranquilizer gun up, firing a dart that struck the young lion's shoulder with a sharp crack. It roared, stumbled, then collapsed, unconscious. James panted, glancing at Ethan. "You okay?" Ethan nodded. "I still on the old lion. We need to move. If more come, we're in trouble." With the threat subdued, they turned back to their charge. The old lion lay still, breathing shallowly, unfazed by the chaos. They hauled an iron cage from the truck, setting it a few yards away. Though they could have darted it for safety, James chose trust. He placed the last piece of meat near the cage door and stepped back, his voice warm. "Come on, old man. This is your new home." The lion met his gaze as if sensing the kindness. Shakily, it rose, legs wobbling beneath its frail frame, and dragged itself inside. Ethan slid the door shut, securing the latch. They exchanged a weary, dust-streaked grin. The journey to the sanctuary began. James drove slowly over the rugged trails, while Ethan sat by the cage, draping a tarp to shield the lion from the sun. It lay quietly, eyes half open, its breathing steadied by food and medicine. At the sanctuary, veterinarians awaited with an emergency setup. The lion was settled into a straw-lined pen beneath a shaded roof. A thorough check revealed severe malnutrition, skin infections, and a mouth of broken teeth. Antibiotics, bandages, and soft food were promptly provided. The days that followed marked a slow, meaningful recovery. James and Ethan visited often, offering patience and care. Each morning, staff replaced bandages and tended its sores, while Ethan ensured its meals were rich in nutrients. James, with his gruff warmth, sat by the pen, recounting tales of his bush adventures as if the lion were an old friend. Over time, it grew accustomed to his voice, its ears flicking at his arrival. Weeks later, the lion gained weight, its coat smoothing out, though it would never regain its former majesty. One afternoon, as James sat nearby, it nudged its head against his hand through the bars, a fragile yet profound gesture. Ethan, watching from afar, smiled. "He trusts us, James. We did it." James nodded, eyes shining. Yeah, he's not alone anymore. Beneath Kruger's boundless sky, the old lion spent its final days in a peace it hadn't known since his pride cast him out. No longer a king, but through James and Ethan's compassion, he found a new home, a place where his faint roars met care instead of silence. In the unforgiving wild, where life and death intertwine, two men had lit a small flame, keeping the embers of an old king glowing until his last breath.